You know, I got to start this off real clear because a whole lot of folks out here think they experts on things they never spent 10 minutes actually learning about. And I used to be one of them. I'm just going to be honest with you. I grew up in Cleveland, black church, Easter Sunday suits, hallelujah choir robes, the whole thing. I didn't know nothing about Islam, didn't know nothing about hijab, and I sure didn't know nothing about modesty except what the old church mothers used to yell about when the choir girls wore skirts 2 inches above the knee. But life has a real funny way of humbling you, of taking what you think you know and showing you just how small that little bubble of yours really is. And the first time I ever really looked at a woman wearing hijab, I mean really looked, not in a curious way, not in a judgmental way, but in a what's the story behind that kind of way. Man, it messed me up in the best way possible. Because I grew up like most folks in this country. TV tells you hijab is oppression. News tells you it's a symbol of control. Comedians make jokes about it. Politicians try to ban it. And everybody got an opinion except the women who actually wear it. And the crazy part, we never question that. We sit there mouth wide open, taking in whatever the world feeds us, and never once stop to say, hold up, that don't even sound right. And let me tell you what I realized. The loudest people talking about hijab are the ones who ain't never had a single conversation with a hijabi woman in their damn life. They ain't never sat down and said, sister, why you wear that? What it mean to you? They just assume. Because assumption is easier than education, ignorance is easier than curiosity, and judgment is easier than humility. But that's not how I'm built anymore. I done lived too long to still be dumb on purpose. I done seen too much to be out here thinking everybody in the world got to live exactly how Steve Harvey understands life. God didn't make just one kind of person, one kind of culture, one kind of journey. So let me tell y'all the story that flipped me. I was at this conference years back. Everybody dressed slick, everybody trying to out-network everybody, and in walks this Muslim woman in hijab. And I don't mean quiet, shy, head down type of woman. No. She walked in like she owned air, calm, dignified, not trying to impress nobody, like she had already been validated by someone way higher than anything in that room. And you know what I noticed? Everybody kept looking at her. Not because she was loud, not because she was showing off, but because she had something everybody else didn't. Peace. The kind of peace you can't buy, the kind of peace you can't fake, the kind of peace you only get when you ain't trying to win the world's approval because you already got God's. And that was the first time I ever thought, hold up, maybe hijab ain't oppression, maybe it's protection, maybe it ain't a cage, maybe it's a crown. And I ain't talking about a crown the world recognizes. I'm talking about a crown given by the one who created the world in the first place. That was the moment I realized everything I thought I knew about hijab was hearsay. And hearsay is the enemy of truth. So I shut up, sat down, and started listening instead of guessing. Now here's where it got real for me because I'm the kind of man who, when something don't match the picture I had in my head, I got to ask questions. So I found myself talking to Muslim women, not just one, not just in passing, but really listening. And every time I asked, why do you wear hijab? I expected some deep, complicated, mysterious answer. But every single time, I got something so simple, so powerful, it almost embarrassed me for ever believing the nonsense I'd heard before. One sister looked me dead in the eye and said, Steve, I wear hijab because God asked me to. And when the one who created me asked me to do something, I don't need the world to agree with it. And man, I felt that because we live in a world where everybody is so busy trying to impress strangers, trying to get likes from people they don't even respect, trying to show skin to get attention that don't mean nothing. And here was a woman saying she didn't wake up to be approved by man. She woke up to be approved by God. That right there stopped me cold. Another sister said, I wear hijab because it reminds me that my body is not entertainment. It's not for public consumption. My worth is in my mind, my soul, my character, not how much of my body I'm willing to show to strangers. And I sat back like, Lord have mercy. How is this the thing people think is oppression? Because when a woman says, I decide who sees me, I decide how I present myself, I decide what parts of me the world gets access to, that sounds like the highest form of freedom. But see, we live in a backward world, a world where if a woman takes off more clothes, she's liberated, but if she puts on more clothes, she's restricted. A world where if she posts herself half naked online, people say, Yas, queen, body positivity, but if she covers herself for God, they say, oh no, blink twice if you need help. And I'm just going to say it. Maybe the real issue ain't hijab. Maybe the real issue is a society that only respects women when they're selling sex appeal. And you know what? I didn't know modesty in Islam applies to men too. Yeah, see, nobody talks about that part. It ain't just women. The Quran tells men to lower their gaze, control their desires, dress respectfully, stop staring at women like they grocery store items. But you don't hear that on CNN, do you? You don't hear politicians talking about that because the truth don't fit the narrative. And the narrative is more profitable than the truth. And I learned real quick, hijab ain't just a cloth. Hijab is a mindset. Hijab is a boundary. Hijab is a statement. And you know the boldest thing about it? A woman in hijab can walk through the world saying, you don't get to see all of me, but you're going to respect all of me. And whether you Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, spiritual, confused, or still figuring life out, you got to respect anybody who stands for something in a world where most people fall for anything. The hijab didn't just change the way I saw Muslim women, it changed the way I saw how society treats women in general. Because once you understand hijab, you understand this world don't have a problem with Islam. It has a problem with women who refuse to be controlled by lust, marketing, and male approval. And that's when I realized something even deeper. The reason so many people hate hijab is because it exposes one of the biggest lies of modern culture, that a woman's value is in how much she reveals. Hijab says, nah, sweetheart, your value was already there before anybody ever saw you. And the more I learned, the more I realized that hijab ain't just about fabric. It ain't just about hair. And it sure ain't just about rules. It's about identity, discipline, and understanding who you are without needing the world to clap for you every 5 seconds. And I'll be real with you. I started comparing it to the way we live in America, especially in the entertainment world I come from, where everything is about image. Everything is about looking young, looking sexy, getting attention, getting validation. And I thought to myself, if a woman decides, I don't want to be part of that game, why are we so threatened? Why is a covered woman more shocking than an almost naked one? Why is modesty controversial, but exposure is normal? And I'll tell you why, because modesty places the power back into the hands of the woman. Hijab says, my body is not up for debate. My worth doesn't need to be earned. I am already enough. And let me tell you, that type of confidence, that type of self-respect, that type of obedience to God, even when the world don't like it, that's a level of spiritual strength most people never reach. And the funniest thing is, the same people who criticize hijab will turn around and say, woman should be allowed to dress however she wants. But apparently that only applies if she chooses less clothing, not more. So really, the world don't want freedom. It wants conformity. It wants every woman to look like the same Instagram template. Same eyebrows, same pouty lips, same tight clothes, same, hey, look at me, give me attention, validate me energy. But hijab breaks that system. Hijab says, I'm not selling you anything. I'm not auditioning for approval. I'm not on display. I'm not for public consumption. And the minute a woman says that, people panic because this world runs on insecurity. This world runs on comparison. This world needs women to feel like they're never good enough so companies can sell them something to fix it. But hijab cuts that game right at the root. It says you already belong to God. You don't need saving. You don't need fixing. You don't need exposure. You are enough. And that hit me hard. Because I know what it feels like to spend years trying to get validation from people. I know what it feels like to be broken but still performing. I know what it feels like to wear something on the outside that don't match who you are on the inside. But these women, they walk into the world honest. They walk into the world already decided. They walk into the world saying, I know who I am before you even look at me. That's why hijab isn't weakness. It's strength disguised as silence. It's power disguised as peace. And I know somebody's going to say, well, Steve, not every Muslim woman wears hijab, and you're right. And that's exactly the point, because hijab ain't forced when it's real. Hijab is meaningful because it's a choice. A woman who wears it against her will ain't wearing hijab. She's just wearing cloth. Hijab only means something when the woman says, I choose this because I believe this. And when she says that, you can't touch her. You can't shame her. You can't intimidate her. You can't tempt her. You can't turn her into marketing. That's why some people fear it. Because a woman who chooses dignity is a threat to everything built on exploiting women. And I'll tell you something else I learned that I had never heard before. Hijab ain't just for when she's outside. Hijab is a reminder even when she's alone. It's a reminder when she looks in the mirror. It's a reminder when she scrolls online. It's a reminder when she chooses her words. Hijab ain't just on her head. It's in her heart. It's in her intentions. It's in her behavior. And once I understood that, I couldn't unsee it. I started noticing the difference in how hijab women carried themselves. Not in a better than you way, not in a preachy way, just in a way that said, I live for something higher than being seen. And let me tell you, when you live for approval, the world controls you. But when you live for God, the world can't touch you. And that's when I understood hijab ain't about hiding beauty. Hijab is about protecting sacredness. Just like you don't put diamonds on the sidewalk, you protect what's valuable. You don't put your passport on the hood of your car, you put it in a safe place. The more valuable something is, the more carefully it's covered. And if that's true for objects, how much truer is it for the dignity of a woman? And here's the part that really changed me, the part that made me sit back like, man, I've been alive all these years and I'm just now understanding this. Because once I stopped looking at hijab like a piece of cloth and started looking at it like a declaration, everything made sense. See, hijab ain't something a woman puts on because she hates herself. It's something she puts on because she knows herself. She ain't hiding her beauty, she's owning it. She ain't quiet because she's weak. She's quiet because she don't need loudness to prove her worth. You ever notice the strongest people in the room are always the ones who don't need to announce themselves? That's hijab. But let me take it even deeper, because I realize something the world don't want to admit. Women in hijab, they move with a type of freedom most women today ain't never tasted. Because when you live in a world that judges women from head to toe before they even speak, hijab says, you don't get to make that call. You don't get to define me. You don't get to decide my value. And that right there, that is revolutionary. That is rebellion against a world that profits off insecurity. That is a woman telling society, you don't own me, God does. And whether you're Muslim or not, that's a lesson every human being needs. Because some of us walk through life like vending machines, giving pieces of ourselves every time somebody wants something, attention, approval, validation, praise, attraction. And then we wonder why we feel empty. But a woman in hijab, she ain't vending, she ain't selling, she ain't begging the world to see her, because she already sees herself through the one who made her. And people say, well, Steve, what about freedom of expression? And I say, you only believe in freedom when the person chooses what you agree with. Because a woman can post herself half naked online and the world screams that's empowerment. But a woman covers herself and suddenly everybody want to schedule an intervention. Ain't that interesting? And that's when I finally understood something that shook me all the way down to the soul. The problem ain't that people don't understand hijab. The problem is that hijab exposes how lost we are. We got a generation of women starving for validation, a generation being trained to believe beauty equals exposure, worth equals attention, and acceptance equals sexualization. And here comes Islam saying you don't need to show anything to be worthy. You already came from God complete. That's not oppression. That's liberation on a higher level. That's a woman saying, I am done trying to win a game that was rigged against me from the start. And let me tell you, I've met women who take off their hijab because of pressure, but I've also met women who put it on despite pressure. And you want to talk about strength? That's strength, not the kind you brag about, not the gym kind, not the social media kind, the God-given kind, the kind that makes a woman walk through a crowd full of judgment and still stand straight because she ain't dressed for the crowd. She's dressed for the Creator. And I don't care what religion you are, you got to respect that. And yeah, I know some people say, well, Steve, what about the women who are forced to wear it? And that's the easiest answer in the world. Forced hijab ain't hijab, because hijab without choice is just cloth without purpose. Hijab only means something when the woman says, I choose this for God and for me. But here's the part that really humbled me. You know what most Muslim women told me? They said hijab gives them peace, not stress, not shame, not anxiety, peace. And I said, how? And one sister said something I'll never forget. She said, because hijab reminds me every day that I don't belong to the eyes of the world. I belong to the one who made the world. And man, I don't care if you're a Muslim, Christian, Jew, atheist, Buddhist, or still trying to figure out what's going on in your life. You can't tell me that ain't one of the most powerful things you ever heard. That is self-worth that don't need applause. That is identity that don't need permission. That is faith that don't need a spotlight. And sometimes I think that's why people are uncomfortable with hijab. Not because it's strange, but because it represents a level of faith, control, and self-respect they don't have the courage to live with. It's easier to mock something than to admit you might be missing the very piece it gives someone else. But that's what growth is. Learning that your opinion ain't the center of the universe and other people ain't wrong just because they don't live how you live. So let me end it like this. If you still think hijab is oppression, you ain't talked to enough women who wear it. If you still think it's about control, you ain't listened long enough. And if you still think a covered woman is weak, you ain't been in the presence of a woman who walks with God's confidence instead of the world's approval. And I'll tell you something. I used to think the most powerful woman in the room was the one who stood out the most. But now I know the most powerful woman in the room is the one who doesn't need to. The one who is already complete before the world even looks her way. The one who says, my value is not visible, but it is undeniable. And if that ain't strength, I don't know what is.